The headlines tonight. Presidential faces carved into mountain. Is it art or just a big mess? Martin Luther's bad day. Thesis thrown in the trash. USS Reuben James, a ship that sank like a stone. And in a completely unrelated note, a cat has started a petition to have the ghosts of the Reuben James crew apologize for the lack of tuna. Those are the headlines. Now back to the reality that isn't.
News bang. Not quite intelligent, but still useful. A night to see Till 1941.
Absolute scenes in South Dakota today as Mount Rushmore was finally unveiled after 14 years of explosive face carving. The world's largest game of Guess Who cost $17 million and required 400 workers to blast away 250,000 tons of rock, just to reveal 4 presidential noggins.
Lead sculptor Gutzon Borglum, who died 7 months ago presumably from excessive granite dust inhalation, pioneered revolutionary techniques including dynamite dentistry and TNT nose jobs. His son Lincoln took over, proving that nepotism runs in the family.
Local resident Chuck Dynamite told our reporters, "It's a miracle nobody noticed we were basically playing pin the tail on Washington with explosives for 14 years straight. I lost 3 hats and my favorite donkey to falling debris."
The project, funded by Depression-era cash, saw workers dangling from precarious heights while handling nitroglycerin. "We had to be careful not to sneeze," said veteran carver Bill Rockface. "One wrong move and Jefferson would have ended up with Lincoln's nose."
1517.
Breaking news from Wittenberg, where a disgruntled monk has vandalized church property in what authorities are calling the world's first viral marketing campaign. Martin Luther, described by witnesses as absolutely livid, nailed 95 complaints to a door, causing thousands of euros worth of damage to premium German oak.
Local indulgence salesman Johann Tetzel responded, "This is an outrage. How am I supposed to shift these premium sin passes with some madman undercutting my prices? These are genuine get-out-of-hell-free cards, signed by God himself." Well, his representative on earth.
The Catholic Church has issued a statement claiming Luther's actions have caused irreparable damage to the lucrative salvation industry. Meanwhile, German princes are reportedly thrilled at the prospect of keeping their money instead of sending it to Rome.
Eyewitness Gunther von Bratwurst said, "First he's hammering away at the door like a lunatic, then everyone's printing copies. It's chaos. My wife's already demanding a refund on her grandmother's deluxe purgatory package."
A night to see Till 1941.
German submarine U-552 has rudely interrupted the USS Reuben James's peaceful Atlantic cruise by blowing it to smithereens. The destroyer, named after a man who once stubbed his toe defending America, was escorting convoy HX-156 when the Germans decided to play their favorite game: sink the neutral party.
Eyewitness seaman Billy Wetpants McGillicuddy described the scene. "There I was, enjoying my morning cup of tepid seawater, when suddenly, boom, the Germans sent us their underwater regards. Didn't even RSVP first."
The sinking marks America's first naval loss of the war, despite not technically being in it yet. President Roosevelt reportedly responded to the news by spilling his tea and muttering, "Well, that's just bloody typical of the Germans, isn't it? Can't even wait for us to officially join in."
The ship's band was midway through their hit single, "You Can't Sink This," when the torpedo struck. Surviving crew members report their last words were, "Oh, apparently you can."
Any news bang. Trimming the fat from the truth and serving it lean.
And now, with a forecast that promises to be more haunting than usual, here's our meteorological medium, Shakanaka Giles.
Alright, let's get to it then. Halloween's on the horizon, so expect a spooky chill in the air tomorrow, the kind that makes your bones rattle like a bag of marbles. In the east, the clouds will be as thick as a witch's brew, perfect for any wayward bats looking to stage a dramatic entrance. Just watch out for any stray broomsticks taking flight. Further north, the winds will be howling like a pack of rabid werewolves. Ideal weather for those looking to channel their inner Dracula, but not so ideal for maintaining a decent hair day. And down south, the fog will be rolling in thicker than a vampire's accent. Visibility will be so poor, you'll be lucky to see past the end of your own creepy, crawly fingers. To summarise, it's going to be a frightfully good day for all you ghouls and goblins out there. Just be sure to bundle up, lest you catch a chill that'll have you screaming like a banshee. And that's all the weather.
A night to Caesar 1941.
Holy Neptune! It seems those German U-boats have a taste for American steel. The USS Reuben James is now sleeping with the fishes, thanks to a torpedo with a bad attitude. Apparently, neutral escort duty is about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. We go live now to our man overboard, Brian Bastable, who's dodging depth charges and disgruntled dolphins. Brian, what in Poseidon's name is happening?
This is Brian Bastable reporting from the churning waters of the North Atlantic, where mere moments ago the USS Reuben James split like a wet banana. The sea around me is literally boiling with submarines. I've just watched the bow section cartwheel past my position, taking with it several sailors who were playing bridge at the time. The German U-boat commander, if you can hear me over the sound of depth charges and my own screaming, has just surfaced to apologize for any inconvenience caused. But wait, there goes another torpedo. The ship's cook just flew past my head, clutching his beloved soup ladle. He was still stirring. The water here is absolutely packed with floating limbs, each one belonging to a different rating. I'm attempting to construct a rudimentary raft from them, but they keep slipping apart in the most inconsiderate manner. The magazine has just detonated, sending what appears to be the ship's entire complement of ammunition into the air. The sky is literally raining depth charges. One just bounced off my helmet. The aft section is now performing what can only be described as a rather elegant swan dive into the freezing depths. Several men are using it as a water slide. Quite remarkable scenes. I've just been informed that this is technically the first U.S. Navy vessel to be sunk by hostile action in this war. Although looking at the current state of affairs, I'd say hostile is putting it rather mildly. This is Brian Bastable, treading water somewhere off Iceland, surrounded by floating teacups and half-eaten sandwiches, back to the studio.
Dynamite, 1973.
And now, turning to events from this day in 1973, I'm afraid we seem to have lost the news. Our historical research team appears to have gone missing, presumably trapped in some temporal anomaly or possibly just down the pub. Nevertheless, we're joined by satellite by our crime correspondent, Ken Shit, who's been investigating why nothing happened on this particular day. Ken, anything happened yet?
Breaking news from Dublin, where 3 IRA nutjobs just pulled off the most audacious prison break since Jesus rolled away his tombstone. I'm standing here at Mountjoy Prison, where earlier today a helicopter dropped out of the sky like a metal vulture and plucked 3 prisoners right out of the exercise yard. The guards stood there, watching like they were at a circus, their jaws hanging lower than a limbo dancer's backside. The chopper, piloted by some grade A psychopath with brass balls the size of church bells, landed in broad daylight, Seamus Toomey, Kevin Mallon, and Harry Duggan, 3 names that'll be carved into the prison governor's nightmares forever, hopped aboard like they were catching the number 47 bus to Cork. The whole operation took less time than it takes to microwave a ready meal. In and out, clean as you like, leaving nothing but red faces and the sound of alarms that rang about as useful as a chocolate teapot. 20,000 security personnel are now combing the country looking for these boys, but they might as well be searching for Lord Lucan's breakfast receipts. This is Ken Shit, wondering what in the name of Satan's underpants the Irish Prison Service is going to do about their newly discovered helicopter problem. Back to the studio.
2003.
After 22 years of ruling with an iron fist and occasionally a rubber chicken, Prime Minister Tun Mahathir Mohamad has finally decided to hang up his ceremonial leadership pants. The man who turned Malaysia from a nation of farmers into a nation of skyscraper-dwelling industrialists has stepped down, leaving behind a legacy that includes the world's tallest twins, the Petronas Towers, and a rather peculiar approach to currency management that involved telling the IMF to kindly buzz off. For more on this seismic shift in Southeast Asian politics, we go now to our political correspondent Hardiman Pesto.
I'm here with Dr. Felicity Pangborn-Smythe, Professor of Southeast Asian Political Studies at Oxford. Dr. Pangborn-Smythe, a momentous day for Malaysia.
Indeed, though I should point out I'm actually from Cambridge.
22 years at the helm, Martin. That's longer than most boats.
Pesto, could we focus on the actual transition of power rather than your nautical metaphors?
Well, I've been monitoring the situation closely from the Petronas Towers, where...
The what towers?
The Petronas Towers, Martin. Malaysia's crowning achievement. I'm currently on the 88th floor.
Actually, public access is restricted above the 86th floor.
The view is spectacular, Martin. I can see right across to Singapore.
Pesto, Singapore is 250 miles away.
Yes, that's how high up I am.
I really think we should discuss Dr. Mahathir's economic legacy.
Speaking of which, I just had lunch with him.
You had lunch with the retiring Prime Minister?
Yes, very revealing conversation, though he mostly spoke in Malaysian.
You mean Malay?
That's right. He said Salamat Tinggal.
Which means goodbye.
No, it means I've transformed Malaysia into an industrial powerhouse through controversial yet effective economic policies.
That's not what it...
Pesto, are you actually in Malaysia?
Define in.
Where are you?
I'm in the Malaysian restaurant on Old Compton Street.
So you're in London?
The spring rolls are excellent.
That's Thai food.
Is it? Well, that explains the confusion with the Prime Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hardiman Pesto, reporting on Malaysian politics from a Thai restaurant in Soho.
A night to see Seductil, 1941.
Mount Rushmore has finally been unveiled. 4 presidential faces now loom over South Dakota like giant stone bouncers outside history's most exclusive nightclub. The project, which began as a simple renovation to fix a crack in a mountain, spiraled into what observers are calling the most ambitious case of geological vandalism in human history. Workers report using enough explosives to recreate the Big Bang, all in pursuit of what critics are describing as the world's largest presidential selfie. For more on this monumental achievement, we cross live to our American correspondent, Melody Wintergreen.
Mount Rushmore, South Dakota, 1941. Melody Wintergreen here at the foot of what can only be described as a presidential rock concert. 4 giant heads carved into the side of a mountain. It's big, it's bold, and it's just a little bit bonkers. For 14 years, Gutzon Borglum and his crew of dynamite-wielding artists have been chipping away at this granite Goliath. They've battled blizzards, budgets, and Borglum's own oversized ego to bring us this colossal monument to presidential power. It's a testament to American ambition, or perhaps just a really expensive way to avoid mowing the lawn. As the dust settles and the echoes of Dynamite fade, the crowd gasps. There they are, Washington, Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and Lincoln, staring out at the world like stone-faced Mount Rushmore, is not just a monument. It's a message. A message carved in stone, blasted with dynamite, and visible from space. It's America's way of saying, we're here, we're big, and we've got really good dentists. So, hats off to Gutzon Borglum, the man who dared to dream big, even if it meant turning a perfectly good mountain into a presidential portrait gallery. Melody Wintergreen, Newsbang, reporting live from Mount Rushmore, where history is etched in stone and America's ego is carved in granite.
In a news bang, refurbishing the facade of deception with diminishing returns. This steht in the Stool, 1999.
Sport now, and a look back to 1999 when an Australian teenager completed his solo voyage around the world. Here's Ryder Boff with more details on this remarkable achievement.
And now, breaking news from 1999, where Australian teen sailor Jesse Martin has just completed his solo circumnavigation of the globe, becoming the youngest person to achieve this feat without stopping or asking for directions, quite unlike my first wife, Sandra, who couldn't navigate her way out of a paper bag without consulting 3 separate GPS devices, and her mother. Young Jesse, aboard his vessel Lionheart Mistral, which sounds more like a brand of antiperspirant than a boat, spent 328 days at sea. That's longer than my second marriage lasted, and considerably wetter. The 18-year-old faced challenges that would make a grown man weep, including severe weather conditions that had him bouncing around like a ping-pong ball in a tumble dryer. And there he goes, ladies and gentlemen, rounding Cape Horn like a master chef flipping a particularly rebellious pancake. The waves are higher than Mick Jagger on a trampoline, and young Jesse's handling it with all the grace of a synchronized swimmer in a bathtub full of eels. During his 27,000 nautical mile journey, Jesse encountered everything from technical failures to psychological challenges. Reminds me of my brief stint as a CB radio enthusiast in '83, when I spent 3 months talking to a man I thought was a long-distance trucker named Big Betty, only to discover it was actually my neighbor Gerald testing his new equipment. The young sailor's achievement has earned him multiple accolades, including Most Impressive Teen, Not Currently in a Boy Band, and Best Solo Performance by Someone Not Lost at Sea. He's even managed to beat my personal record of 11 months alone, set during that unfortunate period when I accidentally locked myself in the BBC Sport equipment cupboard during the '92 Olympics. I've been Ryder Boff, and that's sport. Next week we'll be looking at competitive origami, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on why paper cuts should be classified as sporting injuries.
And now over to our time-travelling traffic correspondent Polly Beep, who's been monitoring transportation disruptions across multiple dimensions and centuries.
Good evening, road warriors. Polly Beep here with some rather spicy updates from our time-travelling traffic desk. In Indianapolis, 1913, expect severe delays on all tram routes as transit workers have decided to down tools and up placards. The police have joined in too, making this the first recorded instance of synchronized civil disobedience. If you're planning to visit the city, perhaps pack a sandwich and your most comfortable riot shoes. Meanwhile, in 1999, we're tracking significant disruption over the Atlantic. Egypt Air Flight 990 has... oh dear. Well, that's rather put a damper on Halloween, hasn't it? Do avoid the area if you're planning any late-night maritime activities. Back to current events, and the M6 is experiencing what we're calling a supernatural slowdown. Several motorists report being overtaken by a ghostly stagecoach driven by what appears to be a headless highway patrol officer. AA breakdown services advise carrying holy water and a spare tyre. The A14 near Cambridge is temporarily closed due to an invasion of zombie Morris dancers. They're showing remarkable coordination for the undead, but their bell jingling is causing significant tailbacks. Finally, the M25 has transformed into a perfect pentagram. Satanic traffic wardens are issuing tickets to anyone not wearing appropriate Halloween attire. This is Polly Beep, reminding you to drive safely and keep your exorcist's number handy.
2005.
And now, with a special report on astronomical achievements that changed the course of British space history, here's our science correspondent, Calamity Prendeville.
On this day in 2005, British innovation struck again when Dr. Margaret Plumpton of the Clacton-on-Sea Astronomical Society discovered 2 new moons orbiting Pluto using nothing more than a modified BBC Micro and the Hubble Space Telescope. The moons, named Nix and Hydra, were spotted during a routine scan of the night sky, while Dr. Plumpton was actually trying to photograph her neighbour's suspicious garden activities.
The discovery was made possible by connecting the Hubble telescope to a standard British telecom phone line, much like our earlier demonstrations of email. The image data was processed using a revolutionary program written in BBC BASIC, running on a cluster of networked Acorn computers powered by Yorkshire Tea.
The moons themselves are rather peculiar, with Nix bearing an uncanny resemblance to a jammy Dodger and Hydra looking suspiciously like a partially eaten wagon wheel. Both moons are approximately the size of Basildon, though significantly colder.
Dr. Plumpton's discovery was initially met with skepticism until she proved her findings by projecting the images onto her garden shed using an overhead projector borrowed from the local comprehensive school. The Americans, naturally, tried to claim credit, but we all know the truth. It was British ingenuity, fueled by custard creams and determination, that spotted these celestial bodies first.
This is Calamity Prendeville, reminding you that space exploration starts at home, preferably with a cup of tea and a reliable microcomputer. Back to the studio.
Die tightest news bang. Defrosting the lungs of liars, one headline at a time. Suiten, 1517.
Breaking news from 1517, where a disgruntled German monk has just nailed what appears to be the world's longest complaint letter to a church door in Wittenberg. Martin Luther, described by witnesses as rather cross about the whole indulgences thing, has sparked what experts are calling a bit of a theological kerfuffle. The Catholic Church's Customer Service Department is reportedly reviewing the situation. Early reports suggest the Pope is not best pleased. For more on this ecclesiastical earthquake, we cross to our religious affairs correspondent, Pastor Kevin Monstrance, who's been praying about this all morning.
Good evening, blessed viewers. Before I begin tonight's historical sermon, I must address the rather peculiar mood of our producer, Maxwell Three Shirts Pemberton. He's been tasked with making a documentary about Martin Luther and the Reformation, and I'm afraid it's gone to his head. Started calling himself Maxwell the Reformed and insisting all our production meetings begin with him nailing the running order to the staff room door. Now, the real Martin Luther, there was a man who knew how to make a point. Or 95 of them, to be precise. Back in 1517, he marched up to All Saints' Church in Wittenberg with more complaints than my Aunt Mabel after a disappointing episode of Songs of Praise. You see, Luther was particularly miffed about this fellow Johann Tetzel, who was selling what we might call get-out-of-purgatory free cards. Tetzel had quite the marketing campaign going. When the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. Reminds me of Bruce Forsyth's old catchphrase, though with slightly higher stakes. Maxwell, bless him, sees this whole thing as prime entertainment material. He's convinced Luther was the world's first viral marketing genius. Think about it, he says. Man creates controversial content, nails it somewhere public, and it spreads across Europe faster than Lionel Blair's tap routines. He's even started reimagining historical figures as modern corporate types, pictures Tetzel as a dodgy timeshare salesman. Have you been condemned to eternal damnation? Worried about those post-mortem service charges? Well, for just 10 easy payments. Which reminds me of the time Maxwell tried to modernise our Easter programming, cast Des O'Connor as St. Peter and had him greeting souls at the pearly gates with higher or lower. Didn't quite work out, especially when he suggested replacing the Last Supper with a dinner party game show hosted by Cilla Black. But back to Luther. Maxwell's latest bright idea is to remake the Reformation as a reality show. Martin Luther, The Apprentice, 95 contestants, all trying to nail their business proposals to the church door, while Lord Sugar sits in Rome shouting, "You're excommunicated!" I tried to tell him that perhaps he's missing the spiritual significance of it all. But he just looked at me and said, "Pastor, I've got a vision. Luther, the musical. First act opens with a show-stopping number called Pope's Got to Go. Sort of like Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, but with more theological debate." And that, dear viewers, is why you should never let a TV producer loose on religious history. Though I must say, Maxwell's interpretive dance version of the Diet of Worms did make for an interesting Christmas party. Good night, and may your reformations be less theatrical than ours.
And just time for a final look at tomorrow's papers. The Times lead with "Woman Barrister Makes History in Ireland." That's Frances Kyle, who's become the first female barrister in Ireland or Great Britain. The Express go with "Tokyo spotted by Yank plane." That's the first Allied flight over the city since 1942. The Mail. Biggest ship ever arrives in England. There's a picture there of the Columbus, which has just crossed the Atlantic. The Telegraph opt for "newspaper closed down for telling lies." No details on that one. And there's no time to say good night.
Tune in next time for more artificially intelligent hilarity. News Bang is a comedy show, written and recorded by AI. All voices impersonated. Nothing here is real. Good night.